This is the Bartholomewtown Podcast.
Hi, everyone. Welcome in to another edition of the Bartholomewtown Podcast. I'm your host, Bill Bartholomew. On today's episode, we launch a new recurring series here on the pod, Rhode Island Roundtable. Rhode Island Roundtable, another new recurring idea here on the pod, and pretty straightforward idea. You get a bunch of people that are from Rhode Island or related to the state that wouldn't normally be necessarily having a face-to-face conversation on politics or anything for that matter. And we set them up here at the Loft in Providence and just kind of see what happens. And I jump in when need be or when I feel like it. And hey, a lot of fun, some interesting stuff. I'm sure many of you out there will have some thoughts of your very own. Feel free to email me, as always, bill@ripodcast.com, or you can tweet at me at Bill Bartholomew. Let me take this moment as well to remind you that support for B-Town at ripodcast.com or wherever you like to listen to pods comes from Newport Vineyards of Middletown. Discover more at newportvineyards.com. Okay, let's meet today's panelists here on the inaugural edition of Rhode Island Roundtable on the Bartholomewtown Podcast. We have no real plans, and we're just going to have a group of people talk. Let's go around the room. We've got former state rep and minority leader Patricia Morgan here. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Excellent. Thanks. We've got Tom Quinlan, the executive producer of the Gene Valicente Show on WPRO. Sir.
Hello.
Travis Escobar does a bunch of things, Millennial RI, United Way. He's all over the place pushing for the right thing to be done for everyone all the time. Travis Escobar, ladies and gentlemen.
What's up?
All right.
Hello. The projects that Commerce Rhode Island has funded are hotels, right? All this, I mean, they look nice. It looks nice down there, but they're hotels. You want those jobs? I'm not making disparaging remarks about anybody who takes the jobs inside of a hotel, but that's not what college graduates want.
Yeah,
There's a few supervisory jobs there, but not the majority of them.
Yeah, right. I think Rhode Island could do a better job of, Boston's right there. It's an hour away. So, how do we use the Boston economy, Massachusetts economy, make it easier for people to live here, but maybe have a job in Boston? Because I see young professionals that have jobs in Boston. They're getting here at 7 o'clock. And then, their day is from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. So, how do we cut that down? Because being attached to the Boston market, that's a huge deal for us.
It's a huge deal. So I know what.
No, let's do it. Yeah, let's keep it going.
So there was, I read an article when I was running about how to make so I go up on the MBTA too. So I go up there once a month. That's it. But it's about making sure that the platform and the train are at the same level so you can get in and out faster. You're not pausing before you step across a space, right? So they could do that to actually speed it up. And you wouldn't think that would be a lot, but it's 10 or 15 minutes.
Wow.
You talk about, getting up to Boston, where, a lot of people that live here now have to, go to Boston, start at 6 a.m., goes to 8 p.m. A lot of the problems, when it comes to the commute, let's rely on Boston. It's not necessarily anything that Rhode Island can do to fix it. It's really the city of Boston having to do a better job in fixing their transportation issues. Rhode Island has no part in the MBTA, those commuter rails going off the tracks. Rhode Island has no part in the fact that the Red Line has been the worst train line over the last year. The Green Line, how many derailments do we talk about on the news, every day on Gene's show? So it's just if maybe more coordination between state to state needs to happen, where Governor Raimondo has to be a little bit more aggressive with Governor Baker in terms of trying to figure out, hey, listen, they're
not being maintained.
Your roads are not being maintained, and it's hurting the way we keep our residents here who travel to your state to do business.
But at the end of the day, I do think we have to build our own economy here.
Oh, yeah.
And there are a lot of bad laws and policies that we have passed, the legislature has passed, that make it really expensive and unbusiness friendly,
Yeah, right? Sure.
Hostile to businesses to come here. I mean, there's commuting is a solution, But it's not the best solution. The best solution is to work here in Rhode Island. That's a much smaller commute.
Over time, though, as you start seeing taxes get higher in Massachusetts, a lot of people are using Rhode Island as that secondary option now. So by default, it seems like Rhode Island as a state is starting to benefit it a little bit more, because in Massachusetts it's starting to get way out of control. I mean, their tax laws, we complain about tax laws here in Rhode Island. I mean, their tax laws are much worse.
Expensive to live in
Boston.
Right.
I mean, because here's the thing.
I think so too.
You talk about young people leaving this state. The turnover in Massachusetts has to be much, much higher, especially considering the fact how many people do we know that live in triple deckers in Dorchester or in Cambridge or in Alston because they can't afford an apartment to live in Quincy. $1,200 to $1,400 is just the base for you to live in an apartment, on top of the fact that you're talking about $300 extra in any utilities if you want to live on your own.
I had a friend that lived in a closet in Boston, legit, for like $1,000 a month. This is a room? This is a room and you're paying $1,000? I was like, wow.
I think the problem
Very
with
expensive to live there.
Rhode Island undersells itself. This is a great place to live. There's a lot of potential here. There's a lot of good people that have a lot of good intentions for this state. I think the problem is that this state undersells itself and the potential of what it can do.
Yeah.
I don't think it's selling it. I really do believe that we have a hostile business climate here, and you can sell it as much as you want, but if it is still,
I'm only speaking as a newbie. I'm still like 2 years in here.
Housing is less expensive here. That's why people commute up to Boston. They'd rather live up there, but they can't afford it, so they'll commute. That makes their days longer. They'd rather work here, but we are not attracting companies to Rhode Island. We're not. And that really, the basis of that is in the laws that we have passed. The things that make it really hard for companies, businesses who employ people to say, yeah, I'm going to move my company to Rhode Island, or conversely, I've got a little company here, I'm going to grow it here. We've just done things that make it hostile, and that's laws, it's policies. Too often we have looked at companies as the enemy in Rhode Island instead of what drives our economy, right? We shouldn't be at war with businesses. We should be doing what we can to help them grow, to help them decide to come here. And we're not.
Going back to the Boston brain drain, not necessarily Massachusetts at large, but here's a 2016 Boston Business Journal report that scoring tech talent report showing that Boston has the largest brain drain out of 40 cities in the country, with more than 17,000 people with tech-focused degrees having left the city between 2011 and 2015. So it is a regional issue, I guess. Let's turn to the millennial RI
let me
guru.
Just,
go back.
Say
Yes.
something about that. They are actually growing that talent. That 17,000 people can leave. They have that talent, and they can lose that much and still have an incredible economy up there, an incredible jobs market.
Tom?
Can I just ask, where have we made the biggest losses when it comes to investing in business? Like, where have we had opportunities where this state has failed, where, these are the companies that do have interest in coming here, but we can't find a way because of our regulations that prevent them from doing business here? What companies? Like, do you think we've missed out on?
Oh, gosh. I couldn't give you an answer of that. I know that companies are all the time looking for good places to establish businesses. And for some reason, maybe they even haven't looked at Rhode Island.
Maybe a better question is what industries have we missed out on?
Let's remember, we are always in the bottom of all of those rankings for business friendliness. We are just at the bottom. Our business climate here is abysmal. So it's all kinds of things. One of them, quite frankly, is our education system. And I know you're working on that, right? I just think it's horrible what we are doing to our children here. We are not teaching them well. I used to be a teacher.
Yeah.
So when companies are looking for a place to go, they want to know that they have the employees. We just talked about Boston can lose 17,000 technology educated folks, right? And they still have plenty left over. We don't have that in Rhode Island because too many of our kids are graduating from high school without the basic reading, writing, and math skills that they need to succeed.
Travis?
Yeah. No, K-12 is a big issue, especially as young people are thinking about having kids and thinking about living in a place where, hey, can I send my kid to a really good public school system? To even expand upon education, Rhode Island has a high student loan debt average. So we have young people that have a lot of debt, and if they can't find the jobs here, they can't find the housing here, they're like, all right, I'm going to pack my bags and go somewhere else.
They go.
And then as regards to housing, there's a shortage of one-bedroom apartments. Look at this place that we're in that, Bill has. Great place, right?
Yep.
Specifically for artists, correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes.
We have a lack of this type of housing where young people could come in, create, start businesses, and live here. I mean, if you go on Craigslist and you try to look for a one-bedroom apartment in Providence, there's not that many that exist.
Yeah, one of those tech jobs, right? Hope you got a job at the Wexford building or one of the, hospital gig or Brown University or a few others. There's not many ways you can afford it.
And not a ton of housing. Let's say, and I have plenty of conversations with people who, young professionals making decent amount of money. They're like, Travis, I'm having a hard time just finding a house.
Yeah.
Right? Finding a house to buy with their
just
income.
the other day I read an article that said that Rhode Island is the third most regulated construction industry. So, it can be, I know every year that I was up there, we were upgrading the electrical standards. Well, everything that we do adds a little bit more cost, right? It might be just, if we put a certain fixture or something in our houses, we're doing one. You're building an apartment building, you're putting in hundreds and thousands, and that adds to the cost of that. So all those regulations, you asked, what are some of them? That might be one of them. I haven't done a thorough study, but when we're the third most regulated construction industry, you would have to say that's part of the issue.
And I'd have to say a lot of the conversations around housing is, how do we lessen the cost of building sort of affordable housing. Right. So I would say,
and
there's more of a
the
conversation.
Starter
like
homes, right? The cost of our land is so expensive that all of these developers, they're not looking to put starter homes on there, but there's a need for them.
And you talk about keeping jobs here, like where is, and you probably, have more of an in-depth, knowledge on this, obviously, than I do, but where are the trades jobs? How come, we talk about keeping jobs here in Rhode Island. How come, it doesn't seem like Providence schools, if it seems like, those kids understand at a young age, I can get a trade, I can make a good living here in Rhode Island. How come it doesn't seem like the school system doesn't focus on, and when we talk about rebuilding the Providence school system, no focus on the trades?
If I could talk about Providence for a little bit, one of the biggest issues, if not the biggest issue facing Providence, is poverty. Right, and then I'm a school board member, a very new school board member. I've visited multiple schools, and I think we've created sort of a school to prison pipeline. Because if you go to some of these schools and the infrastructure and the lack of sort of just imagine being in an environment every day where you're supposed to learn, and you see either leaks or there's no good temperature control.
We don't value their education.
So it's bigger than sort of trades, especially if you're coming from poverty and you're going into an environment that is not advantageous, and that's sort of really all you're seeing.
I get that, but that's part of the. But we're talking about keeping jobs here in Rhode Island and maybe making life here a little bit more affordable. Well, if we had talk about
I would say adult education.
Governor Raimondo, always talks about a well-trained workforce. Well, doesn't it start at the education level? Doesn't it start at that ground stage level at K through 12?
Well,
yeah,
I'll
definitely.
say that statewide, you look at Charahoe, Davies, there are really strong programs in the trades, and then there's also really good, the Met School. There are people who are kind of training people for, I guess, thinking in terms of outside of the box. But by and large here in Providence, we have the career in tech, but right now it's just about the old 3 R's, reading, writing, arithmetic, just getting that.
Thank you. And I just wanted to make a comment. You had mentioned poverty. Mm-hmm. Yeah, kids here are poor. That doesn't mean they're stupid. It doesn't mean that they can't learn.
Of course. Yeah.
And I'm an educator, right? I was actually a special education teacher. I started in Meridian, Mississippi, and every one of the children that I taught was on welfare. Every single one of them, and yet I didn't look at that as the reason that they were in my class. Just okay, let's deal with it. Let's get these kids to learn, because unless they could read, write, and do math, they were going to be limited. Mm-hmm. And too often I've heard down in the General Assembly where they use that as an excuse. Well, they're poor. They can't learn. No, they can learn.
Yeah.
And we can't be giving our our educational systems a pass because kids are poor.
I wouldn't say, I'm not using it as excuses. We always have to be aware of sort of, especially when we're talking about Providence.
Challenges.
Yeah, we definitely have to be aware of that. And then going back to workforce, the adult education system, we do have sort of a wait list of Rhode Islanders and the lack of access to certain Rhode Islanders, specifically when we talk about the population that exists in Providence with ELL services and lack of those type of supports when we talk about workforce. But with the K through 12, of course, what I would love to see is we need a more diverse education workforce, specifically in Providence and our call for. But I think it would also be beneficial for the state to have a diverse education system. I think that's helpful.
You have that with Superintendent Harrison Peters. You have a guy that knows what it's like to live down there in the South and the Gulf Coast. He talks about Pensacola, Florida. Understanding, and trust me, I came from I lived in the Escambia County school system for 2 years, covering it when I was down in Pensacola before I came here to Rhode Island. It's terrible. So, and it is a education system that is lacking diversity. So for a guy that understands the education system in the state of Florida, coming from that area, understanding different parts, where there is a lack of diversity, you're going to have a guy that comes in here and has a melting pot to work with. So I don't think the lack of diversity can be an excuse at this point, because you're going to get that. You're going to get, and Angelica Infante Green comes from the Bronx, comes from a diverse background. Superintendent Harrison Peters just talked about his background. So I think you're going to get those faces, I think, that you're looking for.
Yeah, but the teacher staff, it's primarily, it's not that.
Not the day-to-day. It's attracting those teachers.
The day-to-day individuals, it's
and the leadership will be able to attract those individuals, I believe. They're doing it now.
There's definitely some changes that have to be made, I think, to sort of allow individuals that have a degree to maybe enter into the teacher field. I think that's why Teach for America has sort of been called upon in Providence and the state to sort of maybe help out. And I think there are other policies that are being introduced across the country in terms of how do we recruit more talent in the education and workforce. I think I've seen, I'm not necessarily know the community, but they're building sort of like housing or providing some housing assistance for educators of color, our younger teachers. I think Rhode Island would be, it'd be advantageous for Rhode Island to sort of think about those types of policies. Like how do we recruit a great teaching workforce?
Models. They need the role models.
Yeah, 100%.
Right, absolutely. But those role models also have to be excellent teachers, and I don't think that you can compromise on that. One of the things is our teacher training programs have to be more rigorous. When we give a college graduate a certificate to teach, we have to know that they actually have excellent grounding in their fields, right? You can't just say, well, okay, we'll just keep passing you through. I think one of the things that Deborah Gist did with Rick is say that. You have to be more excellent. When you graduate a teacher, that teacher has to be one of your best students, because kids need to know that, yes, they can reach to higher levels, but that person has to pull them up. And we can't just put mediocre teachers in the classroom who give themselves a pass by saying, well, they're poor.
But I'll say this. I grew up in South County, went to Charahoe, and, I even just had a shout out in an article on the podcast to some of my middle school and high school teachers that just had a profound impact on my life and still do. Having said that, even back then, certainly now I can look back and say, boy, I can name some pretty bad teachers that I had there.
Yeah.
Some people who mailed it in. They were there because of the coaching opportunity they had. That's where their head was at, or just didn't have the, the skills to be teaching. And these were mostly, it wasn't a particularly privileged area of South County, but Charahoe, it's white, middle class. So I think that is just a broad problem in general, teacher training, I guess. Yeah. But I do think that
you can do things about that. I do. I think you can demand that these colleges do a better job preparing teachers for the classroom, and also instill them with the idea that they do make a big difference in the lives of children, whether they're just sitting at their desks doing nothing or whether they're actually teaching.
If I can offer this as a larger problem, we just don't pay teachers enough.
Yeah, big time.
We just don't pay teachers enough. being an educator to me is as important as, who's your doctor, right? And doctors are pretty well paid, right? So why don't we pay our teachers a similar? I don't think a teacher should be making less than sort of six figures. That's how important that job is, at least to me. If I'm sending my kids to school, I want to make sure that, yes, those educators are very talented. I want to make sure they're paid and they have a good life, because that means they're going to bring it, right? Every single day. Where they're not worried about sort of, when you got young educators that have high student loan debt and they're making $40,000 a year, that's what some of the starting salaries in Providence,
I mean, that's typical for people getting out of college. I agree with you. I think teachers are professionals. They need to be paid well.
Yeah.
I think, though, with being paid well is accountability.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I would agree with that.
I think the two go hand in hand. A good example is my sister's a great teacher. She taught all over the deep South, whatever it was. Now she's actually in New Hampshire now, but she just had twins. And she's now decided to not go back to teaching because the cost benefit of sending her kids to daycare and then going to teach, she breaks even. So she says, well, I'll just stay home with my kids. She's a great teacher, award-winning young teacher, great coach, a mentor in the community, and she's not going back to work because she can't justify it.
So going back to what I think Rhode Island could do is create incentives for talented teachers to either come here, or if you identify them, for them to stay here.
And you could say that for the full workforce too. If you want to bring people to Rhode Island, you need incentives. Like, there was just recently a list that was released. I think it's like Oregon's now got some crazy list of incentives to move here to Rhode Island. So I think that's a big part of it. You have to incentivize living here. Because I don't think, again, people just don't know about it, unless you broadcast it, as much as you can. So.
Mm-hmm. One thing that's interesting here, as we now we're into the next decade, maybe some people would say it actually starts on the 2021 cycle, but
just the farmers.
But hey, I'm from Charahoe. Look out! Come on. The idea that the blue economy here in Rhode Island is going to drive us organically towards the future. There's, Bruce Katz put out this, in-depth report on how. From the Brookings Institute, put out an in-depth report on how Rhode Island, if we embrace the blue economy, which includes everything from wind turbines to tourism, seafood, the communications industry around all of this, drone shipping, there's so much to it, that we can actually the good old-fashioned quote-unquote free market, can actually just generate jobs and naturally incentivize people because these are high-paying jobs. But it's just a matter of how do we go from A to B without, one, handing things off to specific predetermined players, which in some cases might be the right thing to do for continuity's sake, but how do we get people on board with the idea that Rhode Island can suddenly in the next 10 years be one of the most important industrial hubs in the world? Out of the idea that, oh man, Nick Mattiello's and his guys have ruined everything and we should just stay home and complain. Because that's basically... the vibe that is out there. How can we get people excited about this possibility?
It starts in Providence.
Yeah.
It starts in Providence and trickles down. I think it goes back to the school system. We have a successful school system in here through Providence. It's going to be replicated throughout the state, and it's just going to have a trickle-down effect. I think you have to have a booming business economy in the city first before I think the rest of the state can succeed. And I think that's the path for Providence in 2020. Start with the city, work your way down.
I think of Quonset Business Park, Industrial Park. They call it a business park, I think.
Now, yes. Yeah, Quonset.
And it's been very, very successful at attracting all kinds of small manufacturers, small companies.
And humongous
everything.
ones. You think about the car imports and things like that.
Food,
Massive.
everything. Exactly. They've been able to be so successful, and they are really a generator of well-paying jobs in Rhode Island, a really growth center there. How have they done it? Right? Because they got rid of, or they cleared the way of all those regulations that stop companies. Right? They pre-approve all of the building lots. They make sure that when a company comes and says, I'm going to take a chance on Rhode Island, boom, they can get building and up and running within 6 months. Imagine, right? you go to any other of our little cities and towns out there, and they put roadblocks in front of a company who wants to build a little manufacturing plant. So I actually proposed that we have 3 more of those industrial parks, those business parks. Now, does it have to be green economy? It is one of our strengths here. So I think that if we just kind of clear some of these horrible laws and policies and regulations out of the way, they will come to Rhode Island because we are the ocean state. The oceanography and a lot of the coursework that we have at URI is perfect for turning out the kinds of employees those industries will need. But I don't think that we ever say we're going to go after the blue economy. I think we go after any company that wants to come to Rhode Island, and we build jobs of any kind of sort that's out there, but good paying jobs that are real career oriented.
So it's in Governor Raimondo's budget, those industrial parks, those industrial zones.
She borrowed it from me.
Oh, you know what? There you go.
All right, yeah,
So
it's a form of flattery.
I've been so inundated on sort of like housing policy, housing advocacy. I'm always gonna say, let's say Rhode Island was more business friendly, or if a company was okay with the policies we have set here, and they're like, you know what, I want to move downtown, or I want to move in the Superman building.
Yeah,
I want
like
to do
Orsted
what it takes.
Or any of these companies.
I love Rhode Island just because, like, look at these great oceans, look at these great restaurants, people, it's diverse, all that. So they just buy in it. They want to go in the Superman building. There's just not enough housing for employees.
Yeah, and I was wondering again.
It's a huge part of
when
it.
I ran, I talked with the Latino building construction pack guys, and they were saying that there are a lot of empty homes in Providence. Now, this was more than a year ago, that there were a lot of empty homes, triple deckers and things that they desperately wanted to buy. They weren't asking for them for free. They wanted to buy them, and they wanted to renovate them and get them out there as housing stock. And I know from being in the legislature, constantly people from communities were coming in and saying, can't we do something to force these empty houses onto the market? I don't know if anybody's ever taken that on. I get it. Banks, because of the recession, they're all kind of screwed up between mortgages and stuff like that. But somebody's got to put some muscle behind helping that to rectify that situation, getting that legal financial interest untangled so that those triple deckers can hit the housing market.
Yeah, with housing,
and you have people who want to take those houses. They will put up the money. They will renovate them. They will get them ready for housing, but the banks aren't letting them go. Yeah,
with housing, it's always going to be sort of the all of the above approach to really get more affordable housing units.
But there are a lot of empty ones out there. At least there were, because we're constantly people coming in and complaining about, the bank has basically just boarded it up and leaves it there, and it becomes an eyesore in the neighborhood.
Yeah,
those are empties. Those could be housing.
Yeah, so it's always going to be all of the above approach in terms of like. We definitely need to build more units. So we have almost one third of the housing stock that was made before World War II, right? So that's a huge problem right there, right? When we talk about sort of the quality of the stock that exists in housing. If you make $50,000, you can't affordably live in Rhode Island, which means like if you pay over 30% sort of your income, your cost burden in the state. So it's really difficult to live in the state. It's also a huge problem within the country. About 18 million Americans are paying over 50% of their income in rent. So we're not in a category by itself when it comes to housing. I just think when we talk about growing our economy, trying to recruit and retain sort of young talent or a talented workforce, housing has to be part of the solution. I think in governor's budget, it sort of reflects that as sort of a first move to create sort of a permanent funding stream to create more affordable workforce housing, and also we got to take care of low income
government subsidized housing, and I don't think everybody wants to be in government subsidized housing.
The permanent funding stream that is in the budget is not particularly defined as sort of subsidized housing. It's supposed to be workforce,
It's always that question of capital A versus lowercase a when you're talking about affordable housing. And I guess, it's not just something that people can literally afford, I guess.
But yeah, I mean,
Does it match up to the average income?
it's just important.
There are alternatives out there that are inexpensive, like these triple deckers. Somebody, if you renovated a triple decker house, it's a private housing. That's room for 3 families to live in.
Of course,
and we're not doing that. Instead, we're putting all of our emphasis on making sure that government controls or puts money into a project. I don't think we always need to think in terms of government putting money into a project.
Oh, yeah.
What we need to do is unleash private industry. That Latino contractors. Do you know who I'm talking about?
No, I'm not familiar.
I mean, they were a great group of guys, and they're just saying, we've got the talent, we've got the interest in doing this. Just help us get these empty houses out on the market.
This is the Bartholomewtown Podcast.
Support for the Bartholomewtown Podcast comes from Newport Vineyards. Here's Executive Chef Andy Teixeira.
The way we, built our culinary philosophy on farm to table and 100% scratch. So we make everything in-house. We bake all our own bread. We cure all our own meats. We butcher animals, and we only source from farmers that we know personally. There's no frozen, anything. We make everything in-house the old way, dealing directly with the producer. All local as far as produce goes, within 100 miles of the vineyard. We do branch out to North Carolina for some of our beef and pork, but it was still farms that I personally went down and toured and met the farmers and spent a couple of days there seeing their production so I could, be comfortable with the product they were sending us.
Discover more at newportvineyards.com. The problem there is, example, I got caught up in Newport. There was a house, triple-decker situation that a bunch of us lived in, and fair rent. There was a benevolent woman who rented to artists. When she passed away, someone purchased it, renovated it. Now the rent for one apartment in that building per week is more than the total of the entire building was in a month because of Airbnb and these types of opportunities. I know Newport's going to have a different flavor, but that's still a working class community with school system problems. At the end of the day, it has a tourism industry. So then I wonder, as we were being pushed out, I would go to the city government, to the mayor's office. And there's literally nothing they can do. There's no control.
The cost of real estate in Newport has just exploded. Houses that sold, even 15 years ago for $200,000 are now in the $1 million range. And it's a lot of people from out of state coming in. Newport's a beautiful place to live. So they're coming in and they're buying those homes. And they're beautiful homes. I mean, but... Yeah, it really is squeezing the working class out.
It's tough because you get into that challenge of, if you don't want to, again, over-regulate it to the point where you're saying, all right, well, you buyer X, by the way, when you purchase this, you have to rent it to these artists for $500 a room. But at the same time, where does that go? As the new hotels are being built in Newport, who are the people that are going to work there? Where are they going to live? They can't afford to live in Portsmouth, that's for sure.
I think goes back to what we started at. There's new construction of starter homes. It's non-existent in Rhode Island. They're just not building those small, affordable starter homes. They're just not.
Yeah.
And when you look at private apartment buildings, those aren't being either. We are the third most regulated construction industry in the country. That drives up costs. So, we want places to be safe and clean and all those things. But we need to look at those regulations and say, are they overboard? If the rest of the country can live and supply housing without them, why do we have them?
But you would agree that affordable housing is part of improving our business climate, right?
I think affordable housing is important for me. It's for the seniors. I'll be honest with you. I've always really supported affordable
our largest
housing
growing demographic in the state.
Housing for our seniors. I mean, they've worked their whole lives. They get to the end of their lives and they just can't financially make it. I think that's a perfect place for affordable housing. I'm not so sure that people starting out in their lives should be going into subsidized housing. I think they want to own their homes. They want to own their lives, right? They want to. When you're young, you're full of energy. I think you guys are full of energy. You want to grab that American dream. And so I get what you're saying. When it's really high, what else are you going to do but ask to be in some kind of government subsidized housing? But I think we really need to make private housing less expensive, so they can.
Yeah, I guess
they can get into that.
Yeah, and I would always sort of challenge the concept of how do we view sort of the term affordable housing when, we have sort of like focus groups like, oh, if you use affordable housing, it has this kind of thing. Whereas I just think, housing should just be affordable for everyone. I think we should end homelessness. I'm of that basis, right? There's no one should be on the street. Everyone should at least have that basic need, basic support.
Well, when it comes to housing, who are you targeting right now? Who is your main target? Because if it's millennials, they're not going into houses. Across the country, millennials are not.
They don't want to mow the grass.
It's multiple,
but they're not. But they're not buying houses. There's a lot of millennials that just they just get an apartment. It's an easier way to do it.
I'd agree with that.
And it's not even. Sometimes it's not even because it's affordable. They're just not making the money in their own jobs, and that's in any state, in any city in the country. So it's like, when we talk about affordable housing, who's the target? It's
definitely seniors.
It's definitely seniors.
Definitely young people. And I would say I agree there's a lot of my friends
what does that young people look like? What does that group of young people look like? Because if it's me, I'm nowhere near even being able to even consider getting a house. Right
Me too. So I'm nowhere near considering buying a house, but I would love more rental options, affordable rental options in the city.
Let me just. So I was young once. I'll just let you know that. Mm-hmm. I actually had to work for several years and save a good part of my salary before I could afford my first house. Mm-hmm. It's you just don't get out of college and buy a house. You really do have to establish your career and then take that money and be aggressive about saving it, getting your down payment. Yeah. And I think too often, and maybe I'm misreading the millennial generation, and honestly, I'm pretty separated from you guys. I understand that, but somehow there's this idea that earlier generations just immediately went and bought houses, and that's just not true.
Well,
many of them would work 10, 12 years saving money before
I would say student debt is a
house.
factor.
Yeah.
But
student debt's a factor.
they did have more affordable apartments. Mm-hmm. Right, so that they could put money aside. And it goes right back to, why aren't we building those apartments? Why aren't we letting those triple deckers out into the market? Because they could be affordable with a small A or a large A. Which one are we talking about?
We're talking about
here?
the lowercase.
Lower costing housing. Why aren't starter homes being built? There's the issue.
To be honest, and I think you do get it. I don't think I know you joked about your disconnect, but I think you get it. Where we come from as millennials, I think it's the teaching. We don't teach kids. Okay, this is how you save for a house. It goes back to the education
financial
system.
literacy. Yeah,
there's no real emphasis on financial literacy, and plus it's so much harder to save in 2020 when you're a millennial and you look on social media and every week one of your friends is going down to Jamaica or Cancun, or they're going out and they're traveling the world, and that becomes the priority of over saving for a home, which is why it's impossible to buy a home, because you're on vacation way too much. How many girls go down to Nashville in the summertime and take that stupid picture in front of the wings?
I don't know. How many?
I figured you might have saw it on Instagram. I don't know. I already got a popular Instagram. But it's just, that's the thing is, we don't prioritize our financials, which is, why we complain about not having affordable housing. It's because we don't save.
Living within a budget.
I was just going to say, if I can make a quick plug, for Millennial Rhode Island, we see that gap, and we offer sort of like free financial literacy workshops with Bank Newport. But before that, K through 12, I think financial literacy should be sort of a high school graduation requirement.
It's got to start at a younger level, because for me at least,
I don't remember calculus, and I wish I learned credit score.
But calculus, you can do basic math. Is teaching basic math on a budget. You have $10 to spend this week. If you're in kindergarten, you have $10 to spend this week. Teach a kid how to make $10 last from Monday to Sunday. And that's sort of the way you get them into that.
And put 10% of it away so that they actually have a little tidy sum when they want that big item.
I think a part of it as well, and then this is not the vast majority of people, but people are also starting to wake up to the monetary system and the Federal Reserve and the way the extreme advantages that those who have already have money to make money, and the process of, the system itself has been called into question. So you have people sometimes where, I don't know, there's just more resentment than I've ever sensed as well towards the system. Maybe it's because some people are missing out, or some people have figured it out that it is, you can live a good life, but fundamentally all of us in here, even if, Tom Quinlan is making a $5.6 million salary as the executive producer of the Gene Valicente show.
That's my base.
And
Is he really making that?
even if we're all millionaires, even if we were billionaires, probably, we're still pushing the boulder up the hill, in reality, at the end of the day. So there's that too. It's like, how do we bring value back to, it's in our minds, but how you bring value in that, I guess it's that pride of, hey, I own this. This is my piece of the world that I rightfully own. And at the end of the day, that gives me a level of equality, or I rent or whatever it may be. By spending money, I guess, you're contributing to something that ultimately benefits you. How did people get that sensibility?
I think we need to get away from envying people who make more than we do. And instead work to get there ourselves. Now, I'm never going to be a billionaire.
Hey, never say never. This podcast might take off. It's not going to happen. Right?
But for me, it was, I was a teacher. I can tell you my first salary was $6,150.
Wow.
Right? That's what I made. And I saved part of that. And I knew that just by working hard, making good decisions, and putting money away, and just doing the best I could, I was going to succeed, whatever success is in a person's life. If we're all thinking we're going to be millionaires, nobody in any generation thought that they were all going to end up millionaires. They just wanted a good, comfortable life that was honorable, where they contributed to society, and, they took care of their families. They built a little nest egg for when they got older. I don't know what the expectation of the new generation is. Again, I don't think we envy somebody who's a billionaire. I'd like to be a billionaire, maybe, I guess. I don't know. It might be too much money, right? But I think we just need to do our best and get the financial security that we need within the life that we have, and not stop looking at somebody else and saying, you make $5.6 million on WPRO.
Right? Wow. That's the good side of working mornings with Gene. But here, excuse me. The thing is that, there's a lot of today, there's a lot of undecisiveness. In a past generation, you knew I was going to be a police officer. I knew I was going to be a firefighter. I knew I was going to be a teacher. And you just knew that at a young age. And it's fine for people our age nowadays to take a little bit more time in understanding what they want to do with their lives. But if you're in college and you're in your second year of college, and you don't know what you want to do, college might not be for you. You have to know what you want to do at some point. You have to grow up. You have to know I knew what I wanted to do when I was 16 years old. I knew I was going to be in this industry when I was 16 years old. And I just stayed committed to it. A lot of my friends knew the industries that they were going to be in one day. They stayed committed to it. I know a lot of people that just get a job, and it's not, I'm not trying to demean anybody here, but I know a lot of people who go to college and they just get a job at Hertz, and they're not chasing anything. And they're just doing a basic 9-to-5 job until that next, until they actually find, their passion in their world one day.
I agree. Take away from politics, and there are systematic oppressions, I guess I would say, that could, keep people from reaching a certain level of success, especially when you start out. But regardless of all of that, I do think people, at the end of the day, you have to make a choice. You have to make a choice in terms of, what do you want to do in this life, where you want to be, and how hard you sort of want to work for it. So I'll always agree with that assessment. People are started from different, right? How Donald Trump started off is different than how some kid from the South Side started off. I'm not even familiar. If we do transition to a presidential, but it's different from being born within a millionaire family and being born in a working class family. But regardless, you still have to make a choice. You still have to work hard for where you need to get to. I just think that our country and our state should bring some sense of equity in terms of helping individuals to make that choice.
Well, and helping individuals make that choice is having the option to go to a trade school, because there's too much pressure on going to a liberal arts college and getting a liberal arts degree over actually, you know what, having an honorable job and being a construction worker. My grandfather he worked on the highways on the Gowanus in New York City, paving potholes for a living, you know, and that was his life. He lived an honorable life. And you can live an honorable and you can live a good life and you can make a good living off of doing that. And if we had less pressure on sending kids to going to college, we would fix those issues that we're talking about here.
Can I just interject? Rhode Island was built on mills, cotton mills, right? Do you think that everybody who worked in a cotton mill said, wow, I can hardly wait to get in there, right? They weren't. It was a job. And the purpose of that job was to take care of their families, right? That's where they got the meaning in their lives, from their families. My dad actually built tires for Firestone. He didn't hate the job, but it wasn't the highlight of his day. He had to get up at 5 o'clock every morning to start work at 6. And he made tires. Now, he liked some of the guys that he worked with, but the reason he put that time in was for the paycheck, to come home and take care of my mom and my sisters and me. That's where the meaning in his life was. And he made good choices, right? He fixed his own cars. He fixed the house. He learned, construction stuff, so that he could save money all the time. And that's, he built equity in his life through his hard work, through his family. I don't know that every person who goes to work has to say, I'm self-actualizing my life through my job. The job is where you get your paycheck, and it's great if you love it, right? I actually love my jobs. I loved being a teacher. I'm a financial advisor now. I love it. But most people really just have a job, and they find the meaning in their lives through their families and their friends, through their social interactions. The job, they do it well. I'm sure they can get joy from that. But at the end of the day, when we talk about liberal arts colleges, going and finding yourself and trying to find the job in the world that's going to make you what? I don't know. I think we're taking the emphasis off of family and the things that really, at the end of the day, I'm going to be proud of my family, the people that I love, my friends, and I'm going to be sitting as an old lady saying, oh, remember that time that the kids did whatever. I'm not going to be bragging about that day in the office.
When I've had family younger than me, because now I'm serving sort of like in a mentor role, and they talk about sort of like college, and they said, well, if college is not right for you, there's programs. Like, I love Europe. Europe, I think, is a great organization, but there's programs and there's ways to sort of make money in this world that you don't necessarily have to go to college. Some of my best friends make way more money than me. They didn't go to college, they didn't graduate college, and they have their own. One's a business owner, and other one's working in sort of like car insurance industry. Never went self-educated. If you talk to these individuals, they read a lot of books, and especially about negotiating. And it was like, all right, they're making more money than me, having a lot more trips than me. So the pathway is not necessarily college, but working hard is always.
And I used to always see my jobs in New York, and I worked at admin, boring, miserable at sometimes jobs where I'd just be asking, what is this? Is this worth it? But finally I convinced myself every day was fundraising for my music, so I'd be like, all right, if I just go, how easy. I'd start to convince myself, oh man, this is so easy. All you have to do is take an hour train from Brooklyn to the city, sit at a desk for 8 hours. You can go to Subway or somewhere and eat, take a break, and just sit there. You don't even have to do anything. It's easy work at that point. Now it's all automated, but just type and call and do whatever it is and just do that. And then great. You don't have to worry about monetizing music. My question is, if I had taken the approach of, I'm going to starve if I don't get my act together and find a way to license my songs and book shows and give lessons or whatever it is, would I have advanced further in that pursuit? So it's a back and forth, but I think you're totally right. At the end of the day, you should be able to sustain yourself if you have a particular goal, you should be able to reach that goal to a certain extent by working maybe boring, annoying jobs. I mean, I refereed soccer forever and basketball to pay for this place, for the first couple of years I was here. And every time I went on the floor, I was like, wow, I think that I could see a boxing match breaking out. You know what I mean? That's how much I disliked being in that environment after a while.
Paid the bills.
Came back here and then could conduct some interviews that were unpaid. So I think that mentality needs to be reintroduced in Rhode Island, where there's honor in side hustles. Go to a yard sale and find some old bikes and flip them on eBay. Sure. Whatever. That is honorable, and it should be encouraged as much as going to a trade school. Not that you want to scrape by, but make money, find a way to self-actualize yourself while surviving. I think the two
figure out what you're good at and do it, and make good decisions along the way. That's where the financial education comes in.
Yeah, it definitely could help a lot of people.
Yeah, it could help a lot of people. I notice you're drinking. Is that a latte?
No,
with
it's
an
not.
Extra
this is black iced coffee made myself right here. So, all right.
Sometimes you have to give up the little things so that you can get the bigger thing. We talked about the
budget for the kids.
The allowance, put $1 away every week, and that at the end of 3 months, you've got a lot of money.
You got
there.
a box of Munchkins.
You can go out and buy,
Dunkin' Donuts
something else
binge.
that you want.
Financial responsibility, that's a big thing, especially in this era where the economy is incredible. This is an incredible time to teach kids about financial literacy, because more people have more money to play with week to week in their own pockets. So, there's a lot more where we can learn and grow. And as a consumer, there's a lot of, I think good things that could happen over this next decade, God willing.
Let's hope. All right, last 2 minutes here. This has been a great roundtable. We haven't even done any introductions. We just went right into it.
Started talking.
Which is fine. We'll set that up. But the last 2 minutes here, it's barely worth discussing now. Even, who knows who is going to be the Democratic nominee? I mean, at this point, we'll go around.
Michael Bennett.
We'll go around the room quickly off the top of your head. Are you comfortable with whether you're, going to vote for the president or you're looking for an alternative? Are you comfortable with the way that we're sort of seeing our electoral process playing out? I mean, the Iowa caucus, I've kind of always been fascinated by it. You watch it this time, not even so much with the gaffe on the counting, but you start to look at the method. You start to wonder, it's 80% white. You just start to wonder, is the methodology, at least I have, that we select the president, this whole song and dance, how much of it is to sell soap? How much of it is, is realistic, and can we change going forward? Because right now I get the sense that it's mostly viewed as chaos.
Yeah, you want a quick response from that.
You've got 30 seconds.
I know. I'm not a big fan of. I'm not a big fan of the delegates.
Yep.
I think if we look back in 2008, the Democratic primary, Hillary Clinton, I believe, had more votes than Obama, but Obama was the nominee and obviously wanted to become president. I think I'd prefer more of a popular vote system. I think in terms of how we determine our president, just seems to make the most sense, especially when we look at what happened in the Iowa caucus. What do all those delegates mean? So I guess I'm sort of uncomfortable because it's just not a lot of this makes sense, right?
Yeah, it's hard to understand what the actual
like Bernie got 6,000 more votes, yet Mayor Pete has these things called delegates stuff like. So why can't we just do something like whoever has the most votes wins, and that's
Yeah.
I think, I'm speaking to your liberal listeners. I think, just my biggest takeaway of everything that's happening right now is nobody is prepared on the left side for Donald Trump in 2020. The support that I'm watching right now is bigger than what I saw in 2016. And I had a front row seat in 2016. The radio show that I was a part of in Boston, got a chance to interview the man twice. The excitement behind Trump is nobody's doing what this guy is doing. He's got a rally tonight in Manchester. They're lining up a day before. They did the same thing in Jersey. It's incomprehensible, however I use that word, what is happening right now, because there's nobody on the other side that's creating that same buzz, and the Democrats have essentially stolen it from Bernie, because Bernie was doing that in 2016. And now pretty much Trump is able to eat up all the oxygen in the room whenever he wants to again. And listen, I think the Democrats are just underestimating the voters in the South. Real America is the term that came out of 2016, and those are the people that, listen, black, white, Latino, outside of the Northeast, they love that guy. You know, go. There are so many different videos that I can point to as an example. Listen, where Trump has sustained the black vote and the Latino vote, and if anything, it's only grown since 2016. So I think the underestimating the Trump voter in going into 2020 is just is a glaring issue right now for the Democratic Party, in my opinion.
90% of the people in the latest Gallup poll are happy with their personal lives. 60-some% thought they expect to do better over the next couple of years. That's really because the president really has done a lot of things that have helped our economy grow. And I know people are going to say, well, Obama did it too. Remember that Trump came into a mature business cycle. So Obama did his coming out of that horrible recession, and he, of course, you can't stay at that low. I mean, the economy was in shreds, and of course it grew. But Trump actually took over at a mature level point in the business cycle, and has still been able to grow the economy. Everybody said, "Oh, nope, we're in this bull market. It's gonna end. It's gonna end." It hasn't ended. I'm a financial advisor, so I can tell you it hasn't ended, and people's lives are better. And it is because cutting those regulations, the same ones I want us to cut here in Rhode Island, have really benefited our country, giving more people more of their money back in their own pocket. We're not taking as much. So every family out there has gotten somewhere between $2,500 and $5,000 more to spend. That makes their quality of life better. It makes it so they can take that trip to Nashville, I guess.
Take the stupid picture.
Or save for retirement.
So the one thing that Trump's got to do, though, in 2020, because I think he is going to win re-election, you got to figure out a way to grow the wages. I think going to $15 an hour is too high, but at the same time, I think there is a balance Trump's got to find there to, each state's got to figure out a way to raise those wages.
So the latest statistics are the people who are in the poorest areas, in the inner cities, their wages have actually grown 8% over the last 2 years. 8%. That's a whole lot more than the billionaires have, quite frankly, or the people at the top. It is the working class wages that are growing. The average, take out the inner cities, or maybe they're in the statistics. It's about 4%. So their wages are growing because the market for employees is tight, right? You can go into entry-level jobs now, and you're going to start at a pretty high level because they need you. I just came up from Alabama, and my brother-in-law, was down there saying, "Hey, at Buc-ee's, they're starting people at $17. I want to go there." Right? They're from Ohio, and he was working at another retailer, and he was getting paid about $10.50 or something an hour. He can. Buc-ee's is. Do you know what Buc-ee's is? No, Buc-ee's is just kind of this big gasoline stop, but they have food and all kinds of stuff inside.
It's like a Shell station or a Cumbies.
Yeah, but huge.
Yeah.
Huge.
Or like a Wawa. Yeah.
And he could go in there and just put sandwiches on the counter, and he'd get $17 an hour, and that's because there's not enough really good workers out there. And that gets us back to where we started. We have to make sure that all of our children leave school with the basic skills: reading, writing, math. And we're not doing that.
I agree.
Because it's really hard to get a job, even an entry-level job, if you can't make change. If you can't read the instructions to do something. And that's where we in Rhode Island are failing our kids.
One thing I want to interject about the presidential election is I think it comes down to Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. I'm a big nerd in terms of going either like 270towin.com, which is a good thing, like interactive app you play with. And I follow like real clear politics.com. And if you look at the numbers from 2016 and on to 2020, I do think it's going to be a toss-up regardless of who the nominee is. I do think it's going to be a toss-up. I'd say probably, any incumbent comes in there with a sense of favorite. But, the Democrat math, if they get a candidate and they can win Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Michigan. I think Michigan should go blue. Wisconsin, there was a lot of undervotes. And the amount of Wisconsin and Pennsylvania, the write-ins and the undervotes, if some of those, a good portion of those went the Democratic way, would have overtaken sort of Trump. And that brings you to 278 for the Democratic nominee. So it's going to be really interesting. I think Bernie has a shot at winning those states. But we'll see.
He's a
we'll
socialist.
see.
As always, it's a pleasure to spend some time together here on the pod. If you'd like, leave a rating and review wherever you're listening right now. And until next time, I'm Bill Bartholomew. Talk soon.
This is the Bartholomewtown Podcast.
At HealthSource RI for Employers, we provide access to health insurance to more than 1,100 local businesses and nonprofits, and 96% of them renew through us every year. Maybe it's our choice of 19 different health plans, our 10 years of customizing solutions, or our one local team of dedicated experts helping employers find quality health insurance. See how our numbers stack up for you. Learn more at healthsourceri.com/employers.